All right. This is a cool one. Um, I had so much fun doing this project. This is a two-piece band from here in Michigan, and we did this. I believe it was in April of 2023. It was an adventure. I had issues with the power supply on my console, and then my console, and it was just a headache to try and get it all lined up. But we finally got together, and we're able to knock this thing out in just a handful of hours. The creative vision behind doing this one was keeping it true to the sound of the band. It's just guitar, drums, vocals, and the way Chantel runs her guitar. She does two guitar amps. One amp is a 5150 with her crunchy sound, and then I believe she uses a Fender amp as her more bassy sound. But here in the studio, I believe we used either a Science decolonizer or a Sun Scepter for the bassier sound. I'd have to dig through um, pictures from sessions to see what we used. But we did two cabs live in the room. I think I did. Um, Man, what did I do? I think I did my 4x12 and maybe my 2x12. I may have even done my Sun 610. I'd have to go back and look. But we did recorded both amps at the same time, live in the room mics, the whole 9 yards. We're going to go through the sounds. And then I've got the first session with a lot of the tracking material, which we're going to go through. I'm going to show you after I did some work on it and why I did the things that I did to get the sound that we have. We're going to kick it off with some drums, master bus on the drums. I use the Fusion. I've got the black box just to make them more aggressive. And then if you ever remember seeing any of my other videos, boom, drum bus. This is a great one. And then I've just, looks like I finagled some of the settings to pull out the drums a little bit. So I'm going to shorten this one up and not go as in depth and just do some broad strokes. We track size kit. I think we may have used my kick drum, but we used her snare and toms and cymbals. But yeah, this song right here specifically, Tupperware Party, is one we're going to listen to. So here's the drum. The thing with size drums, she likes her drums super dead, tuned super low, and I think she was using a Pearl snare drum, which had a really neat snare rattle, and she really liked the way it sounded, so we ran with it. Um, let's see here. Um, so that's the sound I put together in the room. We can solo some stuff out. So if we've got the overheads here, zoom up here a little bit. Boom. Kick. Let's see what I got going on the kick. Loop trotter, giving us some dirt, and then compressing. So here's the kick in, kick out. Then we got snare drum. We'll just kill all these things off of here. Listen to the snare. I should point out, I should dig into another session. This is a really cool compressor, and I found that this one has a really cool way of just grabbing transients and giving them the business. And I actually stacked them with the SSL originally. Let's see here. Toms. Super deep. Really like the way those sounded. And let's go to some guitar. So you can see we got a bunch of tracks here. We've got clean. So I did, of course, I didn't label anything. I'm notorious for that. I just fly through the session, just trying to move the session along and not get hung up on doing little things along the way. So here's the clean guitar that we tracked, and I believe this is an amp. This is an amp, if I remember right. Yep. Okay. And then when it kicks in, I've got them labeled: bassier, brighter, room sound. And I believe on this one, I only did a single room mic. I did. So if we listen to when it kicks in, I'm going to mute these, and we doubled certain aspects. Didn't change anything, literally just played it another time, and I just treated them differently. When we flip over to the session, I'll show you exactly what's going on. So we'll do bassier. Brighter. Room sound. And then dirt. And then all the guitar together. Boom. Last thing, Chantel's vocal. I believe we used Fat 47. Voice is really powerful, so I wanted to make sure that the mic wasn't going to break up too much. I want to be able to control the breakup. And then Chantel doesn't like dry vocals, but also is a fan of a little bit of dirt, which I am a big fan of, so I went for it. So you can see I'm pushing this thing pretty hard and then blending it in, and then using an 1176 on the main vocal, and then for the vocal bus, just got the limit just to literally glue it into place, just hold it right up to the front. So we'll listen to that vocal dry.
I got a dish for you. I got a dish for you.
And I didn't do any cue on this. We'll see what I did in the next session. That's where I really get in all the nitty gritty stuff.
I got a dish for you. I got a dish for you.
All right, so those are the tracked sounds that we have, and then I'm going to go through now. Boom, here's a session where I've got all the business together. You can see some MIDI I've got going on in there, and I'll break that down. And let's see, main meat. Let's see what I did on these fatties. Yep, okay. I was going to say, I know I did a bunch of stuff here. Let's go through the drums. So for drums, I wanted to have more power in the kick and toms and snare. So something I like to do with samples on drums is I personally try to make it to where you can't tell if I'm using samples or not. So I do a blend of the real mics that I've tracked, the real sound that I've tracked, and then try and feather everything in underneath so that it has that same sound of if there were no samples. So I'm going to keep the room mics live, overheads live. The snare bottom mic, so we can catch all the detail from the snare, and that helps keep that snare sound consistent to the organic track sound. And then I'm going to tune the toms based on the samples that I use to match the drum set. So let's hear, this is the final mix, and this is what the drums sound like, and I'm going to show you. I use Get Good drums, the Modern Massive. I love these drums. There's the kick. Snare, we use that. Toms. Boom. Cymbals, I didn't use any cymbals. Nope, actually I did. For one spot, I just popped a ride in just to bring some definition. That's in another song. There's only one spot, so I put that through. So here are the drums all together. One thing I want to point out, if you look at the snare MIDI, I am only grabbing the smacks on the snare and a couple little bits in between. And where are you at? Come into that spot. And then controlling the velocities to make sure that I'm mirroring like the fill. So on this fill right here. So we're keeping that snare bottom in there. If we were to take that out, it sounds silly, honestly, in my opinion. You know, it sounds like a drum machine, and that's not what we want. I want the attack of the sample. That's the beautiful thing about samples is you get a clean hit from that sample, and it's just wham, 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 and then you can just beat the tar out of it however you want. So snare top, one thing I do want to point out is in certain sections, like right here in another song, I feathered that back in for a certain drum part that just sounded ridiculous with samples. So a big thing for me is keeping things sounding as real as possible. And, you know, the technology now with drum packs and sample packs is, you know, we can create incredible sounding drum mixes that don't sound super fake. So that snare, I'm using the drum strip, DA snare better, whatever that is. Looks like I grabbed that and threw it on because it sounded cool. And then I've got a little bit of a high pass. And then side Q, my favorite settings, boom, 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 boom. Once again, favorite snare setting, pensato snare, and then I tweak the threshold to make sure that transient is smacking hard. And then I've just got a limiter, the SSL X limit, which I use all the time just to keep things in check. And the drum bus is probably boom, same thing as the other session. I'm using the Violet EQ this time, and then the X comp, and then I think I tried tape face, but didn't end up keeping it. And one thing I do want to point out is I am driving the output. I think I'm using I'm using the iron this time, and I have the air bass on, and I'm using this. I like the way this circuit sounds for driving my console. So I'm pushing the output of this mix so it's clipping all over the place on the master bus and Reaper, but I'm not recording the master bus on Reaper. I'm recording it back through my console. So I'm driving it back into my console, which is I've built a completely DC coupled section. So I've got no caps, only transformers coupling in my signal path on the console, and my master bus has the Cappy ACA summing booster. So I am driving that and listening to where what I've noticed is when I really give my Transformers the business is the center image softens and the sides come up. The guitar gets, like on this one specifically, guitar gets a little rattier, feels more aggressive, and the whole mix just has like, it just feels like it's about to explode. The other thing, did I use it on this? Nope, I didn't. I had it on there, but I must have taken it off. I was using that little Mojo box that I built. I should throw the link to that so everyone can build one. It's the coolest. I'm probably gonna modify it and put some buffers on the input and output, just so I can couple it with some other outboard gear. I had a couple of weird issues when I was patching it in line with some things, had some impedance mismatches, but that's here nor there. Toms. Let's listen to those toms. I wanted these toms to sound massive because there's no bass on this. Guitars got to be huge, drums got to be huge. And so this is a perfect opportunity for me just to go through the freaking roof. So check these toms out. Huge. And I'm using the Fusion to fatten them up. High passing to 50, and this fat knob is rad. Here's without it. It's dumb. It's so cool. And then I'm bringing up 90, 1 dB, and I'm softening the top end a little bit, so it's just fat as can be. MJUC control toms. I use this setting all the time. This compressor is just the coolest. 3 compressors in one, works great. I love it because these two knobs are probably my favorite reason for it. Is like it's just a quick spot where I can soften the high end, brighten the high end, give a little bit of drive, and the way this thing breaks up is rad. No two ways about it. So this is. And then, what else we got in here? Let's listen to the kick drum. I'm all over the place today. Kick. Did I keep any of it? I muted the kick in and the kick out. Same thing. I wanted it to be punchy. Threw some tape on here. As you can see, I used a low boost on here. And I'm using 15 IPS. No saturation. Just straight up the board. Drum gate, something I've noticed. This is a personal taste thing. Is on, when samples are recorded, you smack the hit, you let it decay, and I like to try and treat sample drums the same as real drums because I feel like that treating them like I would a live drum set, it makes them sound more real. And then some stuff gets a little squirrely, even though they're, nice clean hits. I throw a gate on it, keep the kick tight, and then saturate it. And then you can see I'm blending it in, some dirt, and then the X stressor. So glad Plug-in Alliance picked that up because I've been using it so much. So let's start with nothing, and we'll start bringing stuff in. And then also it's a good thing to point out that when I'm picking kick drums, I audition every kick drum to see which one fits with the music. Because all kick drums, like, I love kick drums, so they all sound cool by themselves, but some just don't fit with the sound of the music, the tuning. That's a big piece of it. The key that the guitar's in. If it's super down tuned, or if it's in standard, or if it's just in drop D, the sound of the kick drum plays a big piece of that. Same thing with the snare drum. Like, those things are super important, is to match, where is the sound? Does it need a super ringy, snappy snare? Does it need a little bit, lower tune snare. Some drummers just have their signature sound that just needs to stay intact. But I also, for me, when you get the right tuning on a drum, that helps glue the sound of a song together. Let's listen to some kick drum. Sounds pissed. I love kick drums with character. I love them. I love them. I love them. And then, you know, there's the battle of when you get so much character, sometimes it just starts sounding ridiculous and you got to find the middle ground. Um, so I'm also using on the Modern Massive pack, I'm using the close rooms and the far rooms. And then I kind of feather in how I'm routing those. So I'm just going to show you how I do it. Maybe you can take some inspiration. Kick, I'm not putting any in the overheads. I've got kick drum in the overheads that I recorded. I want the kick depth to be there, so I'm throwing some in the mono room close. I didn't like the way the far room sounded on that, so I didn't put any in. And as you can see, when I split them up, I have just kick, and then I sum these to stereo. Like if I were to really track it, there'd be a stereo pair of mics, and then I'll just start fusing some stuff together. Snare top, snare bottom. I am keeping the snare in the overheads, and I am keeping it in all of the other microphones just so I can have that depth. And these decisions are all made while I'm listening to the drums. So it's like if I'm like, it just sounds like there's too much decay, or I need more decay, then I'm going to go through and mix these up until it sounds right to me. Toms, I only use 2. I'm using this one and this one. Same thing, trying to find a tom that matches size toms as close as possible, but I wanted that super controlled sound of a sample so I could just blow it up. And then, did I use the floor? We're going to have to go look. Kept it in the overheads. Mono room close, not far, just because I wanted to stay punchy. And then cymbals, I think it was the ride. Yeah, this one. Just for some hits. Now I'm curious what I used. Tom, floor. Not sure. So there's drums. Listen to the drums all together. And then one thing to point out is since this session was so small, I didn't bounce any of these. One thing I'll typically do is if I've got a big session using Contact on my computer, just uses a lot of juice. You can see where my CPU usage is here on the bottom. I'm at 40%. Sometimes I'll get into 50, 60. And if I'm like still working on stuff, it just gives me a little bit of attitude. So I just print them. I'll just record the output of the channel and then commit, which looks like what I did here. Let's listen to these rooms. So these are the rooms coming off the drums of the samples. De-esser. I think this might have been actually the live one I recorded. Let's see here. Yep. I see. These are the samples. So I'm going to walk through. So this is a cool thing. If you put a de-esser on a room mic on high frequency, it's going to compress only the high end. So it helps keep the cymbals out. So we get more drum. Pretty cool. This is another Klanghelm one. Full Woody drum room. I've used this all the time. This is a really, really cool plugin. It's one that I don't use all the time, but when I'm like, man, I just need something a little bit different, and I grab it, it does it, and it's great. The full Woody room sounds killer. I just wanted to make the drum sound a little bit bigger. So this is what I ended up landing on. and a pie. So I kept all that. Is this a far room? Maybe I did track a far room. Oh, I sure did. So I track the house I live in is 120 years old. It's an old farmhouse, and my basement's really cool. The tracking room I built is all wood, mainly poplar and some cherry and some maple. So the room is very tight, very clear, very punchy. And then at the other end of the basement is I have epoxied the floor. It's all brick and cement. So I'll throw a room mic down at the other end to capture all the decay. So here's what it sounds like without. And I think it was like an AKG, the Perception 80 or something like that. That microphone, just in case you're wondering, is actually really freaking cool. I should make a video with that microphone because it's actually really cool as a kick out mic too. So inexpensive mic, sounds great. All right, so this is the far room. Shaping EQ. I'm gonna blow it up. And then, oh, I see I've got dirt here. If you watch the Best Noodles in Town session, I walk through how I do that. So very similar settings. Looks like I started with this preset on here, kick and snare. And then I've got snare, snare bottom, toms. Snare bottom, I think I brought that one back in to make sure that it was sounding like the original drum tracked sound. Yeah, you can hear that Lindell just grabbing it. Killer. And then this is from the Modern Massive Pack. This is the combined room mics and overheads and things like that. You can hear between the dirt and that microphone how cool that compressor and it's super grabby, and it's really great. I first discovered that when I was mixing a Jesse Ray and the Carolina Catfish record, their first full length they did with me, and I was like looking for something that was different. I was auditioning compressors, and I think it was the kick and snare that I started with. I wanted something a little bit different. Brandon, the drummer, the way he plays is really cool, and I wanted to really bring out what he was playing. And so I found that, and after a little bit of tweaking, I was like, man, this is really cool. It brought a lot of energy. I may have even strapped that on the master bus. We'll have to pull that session open and look at it. So let's listen to the drums. You can see I have the drums automated for when it kicks in. It really kicks. Let's take that dirt out. Tons of personality. And when I was mixing this, I was listening to it at a ridiculous volume, just chasing that feeling. Because a big thing for me is if I can't crank something and have it sound good, then what's the point? To me, it's really important that a mix sounds good. Quiet, when you mix quiet, you can tell exactly where the kick, snare, vocal levels should be, like up to the point where you can almost barely hear it. Everything just sticks right out. And then when you crank it, then you can tell if you've got all your mid-range, your high mids, your high frequency, if you have all that, tightly, everything put in its place, not too much, not too little, all that stuff. Then you can tell if, where that sits. And like our ears naturally like limit sound. Like when you turn it up, it's like our ears have a limiter to protect our hearing, and so it sounds awesome live. So I think, for me it's really important to hear stuff super quiet, but also hear stuff loud, because if someone's in their car and they're like, "Man, I love this song," you turn it up, and it doesn't sound good loud, they're gonna turn it back down. So it's like we want to give people the opportunity to be like, "Man, this is great, crank it," and then you crank it up, and you're like, "Oh man, that sounds so good." We want it to the point to where like in my truck, I've got the bass goosed pretty good. I've got the trebs kicked up a little bit, and I even have a little bit of mid range, boosted on there too. And if I get a mix right, everything sounds good. And honestly, for me, the biggest piece was adding a sub to my setup, because when I would get my tannoys cooking to where I liked the low end, it was too much everywhere else. Between getting a sub and going through and treating my room, now it's to the point where it's just like if I send a mix out, I know it's going to sound perfect because I have done the heavy lifting ahead of time. And for me, I love a ton of low end. So it took me about a year and a half to get my crossover point and the volume of my sub right to where it's giving me what I want as I'm mixing. But then when I send it out into the world, it's not going to be too much. So that subwoofer is only there for me for mixing, to make sure that I'm satisfied with how much low end is there, because then it's right everywhere else. Um, yeah, let's listen to some guitars. See what I get landed on. No processing on the clean. I just have a global bit. EQ, taking a little bit of low end out, bringing some, where are we at here? 2.3, a little bit of mids. And then guitars, this goes into my global guitar bus. All I have is a compressor. Chantel's guitar sound a killer, so you let it ride. Here's the guitar clean. Looks like we're doing Verb. If you've watched the Best Noodles video, you'll see that I like using a global reverb. And there you go, my preset sick drum room. And it looks like I'm doing a reverb time of 836. And I finagle this to make sure that it sits right. And it looks like I'm using the compressor on this to help glue any strays coming into the reverb. Clean. Really gets exciting when we get dirt going on. So I have this split into two sections. I've got what I call main meat. I talk like an asshole, so I name my tracks like an idiot. So, main meat. These are things that I'm doing global processing on, like as I'm automating different sections. So if I need a guitar to be thinner, I've got this so I can just pop it in and out, automate it. And then same thing with the API, so I can mono certain guitar parts, and then I can also blend in how much monoing I'm doing. So that's the beautiful thing about digital. You stick a mono plugin in, you can feather the blend on it so you still get some of the stereo poking through. So like right here, we're controlling the wet here, to where we're 70%, 60%, 50%, and so we're controlling that. And then the bypass right here was where it's actually on. So we can listen to that. So main meat. So we got the kick in. That right there is, a big part of controlling the energy. Impact, 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 impact. Want that power there. Need that power. It keeps the song exciting, and when you're listening to it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like we're going on a freaking journey here. These are our doubles. Call them fatties just because I made them big and fat. No processing, just the mics together. And that's what I'm doing global. Wow. I didn't even know I used this. I must have grabbed it because I was trying to find something to make something different. So I used it. Oh, stereo expander. I remember what I'm doing now. Yeah, I wanted to push these out. And then this is kind of cool just to make the guitar big and tight. As you can see, I'm high passing only the side, so I'm monoing all the low end on this guitar, cutting out that bitey mid range only on the sides, and then I'm boosting it so they get really, like when you boost the high end on just the sides, it gives the feeling that the guitar is wider than it actually is. And I learned that from I think it was Piper Payne. She did like a mastering thing, and she did that where she just like opened the high end, and it made the mix sound wider, and that blew my mind, and I tucked it in my brain for a rainy day. So here is the guitar without. So it sounds a little ridiculous, but this is working with the other track. So when it kicks in, it gives that feeling of we're getting bigger, we're getting bigger, we're getting bigger. So the kick in. Monstrous. And then we're using that in and out. So we're going back to something little right here so that when it comes back in, we're getting there. So we're listening to this. Partially monoed. And then we're going to go to full kick in right up here. Boom. And so I'm using that double track, and I think we actually recorded more. Like if I'm doing doubles, a lot of times I'll have the person track a lot more. And I'll go through and do a session where I do like a heavy record where we double some stuff with like an HM2, and then I'll just pop it in and out just so I can control the intensity. So when you get to a really big breakdown or a really big fat chug, then it starts getting really intense, really aggressive. Let's get some vocals, and then we'll listen to the whole thing. So main vocal, what did I end up doing? Loop Trotter, boom, awesome, love it. SSL channel strip. This is a freaking killer one. I think the E sounds better. I always flick it on. I don't know what it is about it. It always just sounds a little bit thicker to me. What am I bringing up? Little 1.3 and some 22, and then controlling some low pass, high pass. De-esser. I think I usually start with the DBX one, but this one sounded better on her voice, so I kept it. A 1176, and I'm pushing the shit out of it. I try and think about like plugins, like they're modeling real gear, so sometimes it does sound cool to give it the business, let it clip, and I play things pretty fast and loose on mixing because I love things to sound huge and explosive and aggressive and a little silly sometimes in the way of just like, it sounds so cool, you just laugh because it's dumb. I like that. And then this plugin is, I freaking love this. When they released this, and I think I got it on sale, and as soon as I used it the first time, I was like, ooh, this is it. This is it. One of the SSL plugins I have. Let me just show you. It's, I started with one, and now look where I'm at. I'm just little by little buying them all because they're so great. I'm using the Soothe to tuck some things into place, and then the X Limit to keep it tight and right up to the front. Glue setting, done, game over. So we'll listen to the beginning, and I'll shut everything off, and then I'll start bringing stuff in. Chantel is such an amazing vocalist that it didn't need much. A lot of these things are just controlling the craziness that I'm putting on stuff. All right, so let's listen to this.
I got a dish for you. 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 I got a dish for you.
Then echo.
I got a dish for you.
And then we'll flick these on. Soothe.
I got a dish for you.
And limit.
I got a dish for you.
And I want to go through some of the automation stuff here. And I want to talk a little bit about this echo because I think this is a good thing to know. And it took me a long time to figure this out. If you're using delay on a vocal, you'll lose the center clarity and punch if there's too much delay on it. So I love when there's a good vocal mid-range. One of my favorite vocal sounds is done by a guy named Daniel Romano, and I got an opportunity to see him play here in town at the Pyramid Scheme. And the guy that records him and does his live sound for shows is exceptional. His work is amazing, and I love it. And I got a chance to talk to him and tell him how much I love his work. And I got to find out what he used for a vocal mic, which is a vintage Neumann 87, because there's one record by Daniel Romano. The mid-range on his voice is so good. And I chase that constantly because I love the way it sounds. He does such an incredible job tracking his vocals. And Daniel Romano is just an amazing musician, period. So I strongly encourage everyone to check him out. I love his work. His live records are outstanding. They sound absolutely incredible. Everything about him is just like, I had a moment where I went to say hey to him at the end of the show. He's loading up his trailer, and I totally choked. I felt like such an idiot. I was like, hey, you're awesome. And I felt like such a cheese ball, but I was just like so blown away that I'm actually like next to him. It was cool. Really cool. He was really nice though. So I'm bringing this in and out. So I'm controlling the mix on this. So super low because the beginning of the song is gentle, and then when she goes in this big sustaining note, I want that thing to just grow. So we're pushing it into, we got a little bit of reverb, which is the reverb that we're using for the whole session, and I'm pushing into it, and then I'm controlling where all those spots are so that her vocal stays exciting. So like, let's listen to this note. It's incredible.
He's a bitter man.
And something really cool about this is this wow and flutter. It just gives a warble, and I love it. It like when it's in the mix, it just kind of like gives the vocal like it almost like like another take is there, just like and it's just warbling. And then I've got saturation pretty much goosed, diffusion and de-esser, which is great. And I'm pushing the width really wide so her vocal just gets big, 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 big. I love that they incorporated the diffusion in there, which diffusion, what that does is when the vocal comes through, the reverb or the delay is pushed down, and when there's nothing coming in, it comes back up. So it's kind of like a compressor on the front end so that you can keep that clarity and depth to a vocal without having that delay interfere with the sound of the vocal. So let's hear that in the mix.
He's a bitter
this song is rad. It's so cool. I'll put a link in the description so you can go check their music out, buy their music, support them, keep them going. Um, and yeah, it's great. So here, while I'm thinking about it, um, in the past when I was starting to really get into making records, this is like 5 years ago, and I did the first Tiny Tree full length embolism. When I look at it now, it's like, oh man, I really kind of shit the bed all over the place. About getting energies move where big parts explode. And this is, a big piece of that, automating the master bus. So you can see, like in the beginning part, we're at negative 320, and then when it kicks in, we're at full 0, and then we're thinning down to where that guitar gets monoed. So we're going to 1/6, and then we're doing, when it kicks in for a second, we're bringing it back down, and then it's down to -2, kicking it back up. So that, like here, let's just listen to this spot right here. Let's check that out. It gives the feeling that we added more stuff and I'm doing all kinds of crazy stuff to it, but it's like you can't hear that fader going down 2 dB over that little stretch. And when it kicks back in, it's just like wham. That's a big piece, and you can see, look at this, I'm clipping that output because I'm driving my console. And, it doesn't work for every record. I try and find the sweet spot. I'll start pretty conservatively, and then I'll just kind of feather it up and down to see what sounds good, to make things sound big. But yeah, here we go. Tongue Cutter. Great band. Great band. Love it.